welcome back to Creative Muse. We have not filmed an episode for quite a while, and this is kind of a special episode for me because I get to interview my grandmother, Joanne Bracker, who is she was a basketball coach at Midland University, used to be known as Midland Lutheran College, for 43 years.
About give or
Okay.
take a year or two.
Yeah. One of the most winningest college basketball coaches in women's basketball of all time, was inducted into the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame in Nashville, Tennessee. When was that?
Oh my goodness.
When I was a little kid, for sure. Yeah. So we're just sitting down today to talk about a couple different things. Yeah, thanks for joining us. Hopefully we'll have some more episodes as well where we're talking to some more inspirational people. But as I said, this is a very special episode for me. So thank you for joining us. Yeah, I guess to start off, I kind of do want to talk a bit about your career in basketball. Recently I know that you were awarded, what was that award that you were given?
I was called Iowa First Lady Award.
Yeah, the Iowa First Lady. And that's given, is it given annually?
No, I think I was maybe the 14th recipient since 1970s.
Okay. Wow. And that was really cool. It was cool to get to go out there and see you honored for that. Because, yeah, you had a long career of, I think, coaching and inspiring young ladies. I think a lot of times, and we've talked about it a little bit, but essentially like feminism almost, because you really pushed women's athletics.
And I guess that's why that made the Iowa Award so special, is because of my connect with Iowa. Having been born and raised in Iowa, and basketball was such a huge part of my life. And then all of a sudden, I attend college in Nebraska, and I find out that opportunity does not exist for the nucleus or the majority, and that was probably late 60s, early 70s. So then, and of course they were trying to pass federal legislation, which they did eventually in the 70s, but it was just, here we are 2021, and there's still some discrimination among females. In fact, a friend of mine has just organized the first girls' state golf tournament in New York.
Eileen, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And so, it's just, you just keep fighting, though, and you make little baby steps, and so that's progress.
Yeah. And Eileen played basketball for you, too, at Midland.
She did. There was very little opportunity for her. I think she was originally going to attend Kennedy College in Wahoo, and then due to financial difficulties, the college lost its accreditation. So, her high school boys basketball coach happened to send a letter to our athletic director, and I didn't once in a million years think she would come to Midland.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a long way. That's
Yeah.
And then I thought, well, will she stay at Midland? But she did, and she's one of my best friends.
Yeah. One of your longest friendships, I think, for sure, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I think that's something that always really impressed me, not only with you, but also with Grandpa, is these connections that you make. They're very strong and very deep, and they are very long-lasting, and with all types of people. I had the opportunity to meet so many really cool people and experience so much as a child because of the connections that you had, connections Dad had as well. I think of, like, you were talking about Locke just a little bit ago, eating egg rolls, because they're Vietnamese, right? Yeah, I think they'd be Vietnamese. And so eating, like, fresh Vietnamese egg rolls, and then, like, being involved in their wedding. And I remember they had pigeon heads at the reception.
You were the ring bearer.
I was the ring bearer, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's like, or even going abroad, being able to travel to Europe for the first time with you guys. That was just such a special experience. And I don't think that we would have ever arrived at that or ever been able to do that if it weren't for the type of personalities that you guys have. you're just such welcoming and generous and friendly people.
And to me, racism is just should be a non-existent word.
Yeah.
You just absorb those people in your lives.
Yeah.
You don't worry about, you know, yeah, like we had a German exchange student, and I had a player from Croatia, and I made friends with someone from England, and you just don't even think about.
No. Yeah, it's certainly not the color of somebody's skin or what culture they have. In fact, you want them to have that culture. You want them to allow you to experience that and to see their lives for what they are. I think, yeah, like Carmen is a great example of somebody, she, I think, kind of marches to the beat of her own drummer for sure, but it's such a vibrant and beautiful life. And it was so cool getting to know her and meet her. And yeah, I remember because I was so proud I was able to say her last name. I think it's Yarosevich.
Correct.
Yeah, and she was like impressed because at the time, I was probably like 12 or something.
Even though it's spelled Jerivec, I believe.
Yeah. So,
and that's another player that she came miles to attend college here, and I said,
yeah,
she did have a brother that was a senior her freshman year, and they spent all kinds of time together because he'd been a foreign exchange student here in the United States, and she hadn't seen him for a long time. So that was really, they got the chance to rebond. But then, of course, he graduated. I thought, oh, she's going back to Croatia. But she didn't. She stayed all 4 years. And I jokingly said when she was a sophomore, well, your senior year, we're going to go to Croatia so you can play in front of your family and friends. And then all of a sudden, it's her junior year, and I'm going, oh my gosh, I got to make this thing happen. So we had lots of fundraisers and lots of time and energy, and it happened.
Yeah, you put it into it. Tristan got to go on that trip, right?
He did, yeah.
Yeah.
He had his own little harem of basketball players.
Well, yeah, I mean, I know the basketball girls always liked Tristan. They always thought he was so cute. And
well, they like Kale too.
Yeah.
Kale was close enough in age, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know about that, so now I'm just kidding.
Now you know.
Now I know.
You can go through my list of alumni players.
Yeah, do you still have their phone numbers?
I do. I have their email, a phone number, whatever you want.
Oh, that's funny. But yeah, I guess, so you had mentioned that, you're from Iowa. I know you went to Dana College. What was the start for you with basketball? When did you really fall in love with it?
Well, to go back into the history of Iowa basketball, and I can't give you the exact dates, but I think it was in the 1930s that maybe his name was E. Wayne Cooley that decided girls should have the opportunity to play basketball.
Yeah.
Of course, they modified the game considerably, thinking that girls couldn't handle the fast-paced 5-player game, so it was a 3-player game, and I think you had to keep 3-foot spacing, and they had some really crazy rules.
Yeah.
And then there was a huge blizzard one year, and that made him realize, and of course at that point they weren't televised, that you've got to have more to those games than just the game itself. Well, and then there were some really lopsided games where the score was 100-10 or something like that.
Oh my God.
And he said, well, I can't control that. So then he made it into a production, and he started marketing it. So like one night of the state tournament, the champion of every single team in the state of Iowa would take the court. Well, of course, that brings their parents. And
yeah.
then they would have young, good-looking guys that would put on tuxedos, and they would be the floor sweepers. And, I can just go through all kinds of things. And they're still marketing. I think, my experience receiving the award this summer made me realize, that they are still doing things to market. I think it was breast cancer awareness that day, and they were all wearing pink.
Yeah.
And they had the male umpires wearing pink.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we've made a lot of progress. And Iowa has really been a leader in
that effort.
And I'd say, it was basketball. It was mainly basketball. I don't think in my high school, they didn't add other sports until my junior year, and then they added track and softball and so on. But basketball was huge,
Yeah.
and it's like great grandparents played basketball, so it was just you had to get the tickets a year in advance because it was sold out.
Oh my
And it
God.
was huge, and
Yeah.
that's kind of what sports teaches you so much. Um, in terms of work ethics and communication skills and teamwork and endurance and perseverance, and
Yeah.
so it's a game, but it's such a important learning experience.
Right. I think discipline as well, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's a huge one. I think I think back to games and man, I remember you getting so fired up on the court and really like, especially it kind of felt like if there was a game where the team just wasn't, it just felt like they weren't there. They weren't totally, I don't know if it's not bought in, or they just weren't on the court the way that they could be,
Yeah.
and you knew that, then you would really give it to them. And I think that discipline to just push through, and sometimes when you're way down, and I remember there would be games, there were at least a few games where I remember the comeback and seeing that comeback, and that man, that's just exciting to watch.
Sometimes it doesn't even end up a victory, but the comeback is so dynamic that you feel good at the end of the game.
Yeah, because you really left it all on the
Right,
court.
right. We played in California one year, and we were, I don't know, 20, 30 points down at halftime. We changed defenses, and I put a little 5'7" tough little guard on a 6'2" player on their team and shut her down second half, and we almost won the game. And I
Yeah.
mean, that was huge. Everyone was so excited and felt so good about that.
That's
Um,
great.
But yeah, that's the most difficult, challenging part of coaching is the mind, the mental. I went to a workshop at the Olympic Training Center one year on mental development, and they said we've kind of maxed out in terms of developing athletic skills, the conditioning piece of it, but we haven't mastered the mental piece of it, and that's really, and as a coach, you can't really tell prior to a game. Sometimes some players are overly motivated, some are undermotivated. Um, what motivates this one doesn't motivate that one, and I mean it's just putting the pieces together.
Right.
So but
You
it's
never know
a
what
lesson
somebody.
in learning from a coaching standpoint and a player standpoint.
Right. You never know what somebody's going through too,
Correct.
and people can have a they can, what is it, present. They can present very well, and then when the rubber meets the road, they might not have that same metal. I guess. I've noticed that with workers too, because I've kind of started developing teams, but in a different respect. And I've noticed that sometimes you have people who they're going to tell you, oh yeah, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm good at this, I'm good at that. But then when it comes to the actual task, some people just really aren't there, and that's what makes the difference, is having people that are hard workers. In fact, I have kind of come to realize that really you shouldn't, if you can do something, you shouldn't say you're going to do it. You should just do it.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you're not totally committed. And that was, I think, my motivation in teaching and coaching was always to get a player or a student to the point that they wanted to get to. I can think of some players that they would come in after their freshman year and they'd have this whole sheet of goals, and I'm thinking, oh, I don't know if they can be an academic All-American, or I don't think if they could, and they would accomplish that, and I mean that was so rewarding or refreshing.
Yeah.
I mean that's what kept me motivated, and I think if I look at some of those same players, they are very successful in life, and so that was something they learned through sports.
Yeah. Yeah, that got them started. It's similar to how when people go through the military, they learn all of these traits. And then, some people are really good at taking that and then applying it into different fields. Some people don't, or I've seen people go through the military and then they come out and they still don't, quite have that. They maybe still they have the skills there, but then they don't know how to apply it to other situations
Right.
or other,
And I'm sure it's for military people that are lifers to adjust to
yeah,
life outside the military,
true,
because you're entering a different social world, actually.
absolutely, yeah,
When you've developed some really high respected qualities in terms of work ethics and discipline and um, hopefully team camaraderie and so on, but it's still, you have to function in a different world
yeah,
outside the military.
yeah. When you have something that sets you apart so much, um, it can take a lot to find a way to adapt back to a normal, I suppose,
Correct.
life.
Right.
Yeah. Kind of like well, but it also is when you said social, that made me think of how, it is built-in friends. I mean, built-in brothers almost really, if you're in the military, uh you're with these people whether you like it or not.
Right.
And so you learn to love them, or you learn to work with them at the very least. It's like a fraternity,
Right.
essentially.
And it's situations where you're with them 24/7.
Mm-hmm.
So, I've had students come to college and they were best friends, and so they would naturally want a room together. And then when they found themselves in the confines of that little cubicle, they found out they had idiosyncrasies that the other one didn't appreciate, and they ended up
Right.
being almost enemies.
Yeah.
So it's being accepting and know that you have faults as well. So it's a lot of give and take, but that's
Right.
challenging to.
Yeah, it's like putting a puzzle together,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think about the teams at my workplace, QOI, where sometimes we don't agree on everything, but we have the same goal. We all want to accomplish this goal of helping these people get better and be able to come back to society, come back to a normal life, be able to live. And so yeah, like we're gonna butt heads from time to time. I think about my house too, where I have I have 3 roommates, and then almost really 4, because we have an honorary girlfriend who kind of comes and goes. So uh, it's but we all make it work because we enjoy the times that we are together, even if we don't always agree. Yeah, and ultimately that's what I mean. This is kind of all encompassing, but that's what is so beautiful, and what life is really about is being able to gel together and work with other people. And
Yeah,
yeah,
you need to take advantage of it, make it a positive rather than a negative.
right,
Well, and in the last few years, so many students would come to college and they had their own rooms and even their own bathroom facilities. And then all of a sudden, in some residence halls, they find themselves, with one large, and of course they're transitioning to apartments, but, I found that was really difficult for them. And, they put 2, sometimes 3 in a room. So, yeah, when you're used to living independently and having, your own space, and then you get put in that situation, that can be a challenge. But that's a learning lesson. I always used to
yeah,
tell my players, you can't, if you're a nurse and you don't like certain patients, you can't say, well, I'm not going to treat them. Or if I'm a teacher,
right,
you can't say, I'm not going to teach them because I don't like them or, whatever. So that's really an important quality in life, is to learn to adapt and learn how to accept them.
yeah. I love that you said that. That was really good. Yeah. So I guess kind of I have 3 more major things that I want to talk about, but the next one, I think this is a perfect segue, is relationship. And I think that one of the most impressive relationships that I've seen is your relationship with Grandpa. Just how you guys work together, and it's kind of funny because I remember as a kid, one time you guys were arguing, and I was just stressed about it. It just bothered me. I hated it. I was like, stop. I was like, stop arguing. It's stupid. And I think it was something silly. I think, he's not always the best communicator about what he's going to do. He's very he's even said that he has ADD, because he'll go from thing to thing to thing, and he doesn't always explain what he's going to do. And he also likes it when people do things his way. So I'd love to just discuss that and talk more about your.
And that's the most interesting, sometimes you think he's stubborn, or, I ask him, should we do this? Absolutely not, or that's a dumb idea, or whatever. And then a lot of times I'll just say, okay, I'll wait a while. And sure enough, he changes his mind, or he'll say, yeah, that's a good idea. We should get Kale a new car.
Right. Well, I appreciate that conversation. At Malibu has been one of the coolest cars I've ever had.
Yeah, he just enjoys life. And it's kind of like you, Kale, because, he can kind of make fun out of anything, like going over to Iowa and picking potatoes, or taking those gourds and making a decoration out on our front step, or, peeling apples and making applesauce. He has to be doing something all the time, and it's a variety of things.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of different interests and so on.
A lot of different.
And I think what made it work is the fact that, and that was difficult because we worked pretty close together in coaching.
Mm-hmm.
But it's giving each other their own space. Like I was okay. He was okay when I'd go off to a coaching clinic or a coaching tournament, and I'm all right when he goes out hunting hunting in western Nebraska.
Yeah.
And so I think having your own space is important.
Right. Yeah, I think so too. I think that's always been difficult in, I think of my past relationship, the one that you're very well aware of, and how that I kind of got myself into something where I didn't have that. There wasn't really a separation. It was so close that really anything really affected anything, any decision, any discussion. And so I think that really put a lot of things into perspective for me as to what type of relationship I would want. And I think, when you have something like that, you really don't have to worry about things like jealousy or that as much, because it's just not, it's not about that. It's about letting the other person live their life and live a good life. And you're so grateful that they choose to spend any time with you at all, because they are so special. And
I think you find a lot of friendships, whether it's marriages or any kind of relationships, so many times someone needs or wants to control.
Yeah.
And, it's not healthy for the person doing the controlling, and it's certainly not healthy for the person being controlled. Mm-hmm. And that's where you have to, find a equal medium and, not let that happen.
Right.
Because, and I guess sometimes probably Grandpa would say, you're controlling, but I'm just organizing.
Yeah.
There's a difference between controlling and organizing him and reminding him he has this appointment or this appointment and so on. But he really, whether he admits it or not, likes direction. I mean, at least point him in the direction that he needs to do something. Then he wants to go off and do it on his own and so on. And I think that can make for a healthy relationship. It's not like you're dominating, but you're
collaborating.
Collaborating. It's a perfect word.
Yeah. Yeah, you're working together to make something. I've just learned so much from both of you. I mean,
and then you worry about if there's a void in that person's life that's trying to be the controller.
Yeah.
Why do they have that need to feel like they have to control someone?
And can that ever be fulfilled by you? I mean, certainly.
Exactly.
I would think not in most cases. Yeah. And maybe they think that you can fulfill that need. but it's probably something deeper. I think in a lot of cases too, it's something that the person doesn't want to face. I've met a lot of people who, I have a conversation. I'm very good at finding my way to those deep chambers, as you're well aware of.
Yeah.
Uh, and and yeah, I'll arrive there, and a lot of times that's where I meet the most resistance is when somebody says, "Oh, I don't want to talk about that," and which I understand, but I think that is what it takes in a lot of cases is that person facing that and saying, you know what, this is a part of myself. Maybe this thing happened to me, or maybe there's something that I don't like about myself, or whatever it happens to be. But I'm going to accept it. I'm just going to let it go.
And a lot of that is admitting it. I think probably anybody that's addicted to anything, their greatest challenge is to admit that is an issue for them, whether it be alcohol or drugs or, in my case, chocolate.
Right. Yeah.
Because you really can't begin to repair or heal a situation until you identify the situation exists.
I think of it as like a thorn. That's how I thought of it a lot. Like if you had it, say you got, or in my case, as a child, I had Grandma Roseanne told me about this. She had a piece of lead that had gotten stuck under her skin, like a pencil had stuck in and broke off. And I don't know, maybe she was just telling me a story, but she would show me and she'd be like, "Yeah, that's where that is." And in order to get that out, you kind of have to peel away those layers of skin.
It's a good analogy.
Pull that thorn out and you throw it away, and it'll heal. It'll actually heal. It's yeah, because it's almost like it's something that's infected or something. And that I think that's something I did want to touch on as well. Is I haven't always agreed with your policy on things like drugs and on alcohol. I've kind of agreed a bit more just because I literally think that alcohol is poison. But I think.
Well, I guess my biggest issue is letting anything control you.
Yes.
I've always said I want to be in charge of my life. I don't want to have anything, and it can be simple. Well, mine's sugar, and I have to work on it constantly. But yeah, you want to be in control of yourself and be in control of your life, basically.
And I think that makes you. I mean, it makes it so that when you're portraying yourself, you are portraying the true self. You're not portraying these substances or these things that are not actually you. In some cases, it's almost just ideas. I think sometimes people get so tied into an idea that becomes their identity. But if you look at it a little closer, it's not actually them.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we touched on that because I think that is something that I wanted to bring up just because I am impressed by the way that you approach that. I think you having that belief has saved me in a lot of cases because I think, if I didn't have that idea or if I didn't have confrontation with you about that, I would be in a much worse area now than I am. And so,
and this kind of gets back where we started in terms of my roots being in Iowa. And I look back, and after having traveled over, through most of the states and several foreign countries, I realized that those people were real. They were genuine, they were generous, they had kind hearts. So, you develop that without anyone really preaching to you. You just see it. You see it every day. Yeah. And of course, there were the, few gossipers and so on, but
sure.
Basically,
yeah,
just hardworking,
honest people.
Honest people, yeah. And certainly, I can identify that was my parents, but then I look at my friends' parents, and it's just the whole community. Yeah, and I'm sure it's changed over the years somewhat, but yeah, I always appreciated that.
Anytime I meet somebody from Iowa, I'm impressed. I've had a lot of residents from Iowa, and I'm always excited about it because I think it's so funny. We'll have these little kind of feuds about Nebraska and Iowa football, but it's friendly. It's a really friendly feud.
Right.
We actually have a lot of respect for each other,
Right.
and
Right.
so that's always been really cool for me to kind of to indulge in that and then say, well, yeah, I can tell you Husker football is better, but at the end of the day, my family's actually from Iowa, so it's kind of a farce a little bit. So, um, yeah, I think that's really cool. The next thing I want to talk about is a little bit heavier, but I think it's important. You've been dealing and kind of fighting in a struggle against cancer, um, liver cancer. I'm not sure quite the specifics of it, but I would like to kind of talk about your experience with that and how you've managed to continue to go, because I think that's the thing is when we first found out about it, I think maybe you had known about it for a little while, but you sat us down and you told us and you said, yeah, it's, they're saying maybe 6 months or something like that. And now it's been 3, almost 4 years.
Right.
And that has been extremely impressive to me as well, is that you've been going through this and it's kind of almost been it's been a very private struggle for you. It's been something that you have dealt with and carried yourself, and you haven't really allowed us to really take that. But I just want to see kind of
Well,
your
and I guess
perspective.
when I was first diagnosed, I thought, well, this is an obstacle. I got to face it, and I've never wanted to be a burden to other people. Everybody has their own problems, so you have to be strong enough to deal with it yourself, and kind of just take a day at a time and think, well, that's great. I'm still alive today, and maybe I'll be alive next week. And I mean, you don't plan anything long term, but
Yeah.
it's still saying I'm going to maximize today. It's like I had the issue with spinal stenosis that I had difficulty walking up and down stairs. And I said, well, this isn't good. But, through patience and persistence, I was able to overcome that. And now it's, totally in the past.
Yeah.
And I realize cancer is more threatening, um, but it's, I guess everyone's going to die of something.
Right.
And as my mother used to say, we've got to keep dying because we've got to make room for all these new kids as being born.
Yeah.
And I kind of go with that philosophy.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to live to be 100, and if that happens, it happens. But if it doesn't, you accept life for what it presents to you.
I don't know if I've told you, but I want to live to 500. So.
You want to be in the record books, huh?
I want to be in that's not a centenarian, that'd be a quincentenarian probably.
Yeah.
But
And you going through the cancer process, you have your good days and you have your bad days, and so you have a bad day, and then you say, well, this is okay because tomorrow is going to be better.
yeah.
So you kind of, it certainly changed my lifestyle because I was always very active and organizing dinners and all kinds of things, so you just learn to, like I always loved to read, but during my 45 years of teaching coaching, I really didn't read much. So I've, returned. I always have a book or something that I can go to read. Of course, as you know, I've always enjoyed cooking, so I can find entertainment just going through a cookbook. I mean, you find to enjoy and appreciate the little things in life.
Yeah.
Always before, and sometimes I see people that they have to take trips and they have to do this and they have to do that.
Right.
And they're overlooking the little things in life that makes life special.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, and maybe in some cases they're searching for that thing. They're going out.
Exactly.
And they're going to the ends of the earth to try to find this thing. But it's not really out there. It's actually in here, and it's meant to be shared. And that's kind of...
And I think you'll find the most enjoyment in life is helping people.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can make life a little bit easier for them, and again, that's kind of the little things. I used to be working with over 100 students at a time, and now I just have kind of a little group of probably 10, 15 that, they kind of have issues. They're aging, so they have health issues, um, and I think, well, now if I can just give them a little enjoyment and little support, that's great.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and that's I've even thought about that in music performance. You don't need to be in front of a stadium. You can be in front of 10 people, and you could have one of the best performances ever. I've had weddings where maybe most of the people weren't dancing, but one or two people came out, or I've danced on the dance floor, with two or three people, and that is special to me because I get the opportunity to be with those people and spend the time with those people,
And provide a little enjoyment in there.
yeah.
When I was teaching in Castle, Wyoming, I was at a school, and there was a little boy who had a horrible home life. And I remember one day he even came with, I said, Jimmy, what's in your pocket? Well, that's my sandwich. I made myself a sandwich this morning. And then that really motivated me as a teacher, because I said, if I can give Jimmy 30 minutes of happiness twice a week, I've accomplished something. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm happy because I made life a little bit better for Jimmy 2 days for 30 minutes, but that's important.
Was there ever a time when you saw Jimmy smile because of that?
Oh, yeah, he loved physical education class.
That's awesome.
And of course, I would make him, I can't remember as him being a, super athletic, but I just always made him feel important in that class. I think your grandpa did that so well in his teaching, over and over and over. I'll have former students. In fact, yesterday I just talked to one, and Mr. Bracker, I loved him. He just made me feel so good, and he was so funny, and he was so. They just go on and on and on.
Yeah.
And I think that's what made him a good teacher. That's what made him successful, is because he wanted to reach. He always said, every child is good at something. You just have to find that something that they're good at.
Yeah. And I think that's a beautiful philosophy. I think I've inherited that philosophy of, I even take it to the level of that. I think everyone is good, and maybe good at something is true as well. But I think everybody is good. It's just about finding the position that they need to be in to do the thing that they were meant to do.
Which you tell my players that, I think you're perfect. You're coming in as a freshman, and I think you're perfect. Now, you'll be the one that will prove me wrong.
Yeah. Ultimately, you have the ability to make the impression.
Yes.
Yep. And you can.
As you break rules and as you create issues, then the slate's no longer clean.
Right.
You have to add a few little
Yeah.
asterisks.
And it's so interesting how people do have and this is something that I'm not fond of, and something I realized at a young age is that people can have a different persona or personality based on who they're surrounded by. And some people will kind of, they'll come to me and they'll be very genuine, and I think that's their true self. I think that's usually who the person actually is. But then when we're in a group, all of a sudden they flip into this kind of performative persona. And
My pet peeve has always been people that's not genuine.
yeah,
They're trying to be someone that. But you don't need to prove yourself. I mean, just be yourself. And, you don't have to impress people with material things.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just, yeah. And it's giving to others so they feel better about themselves.
Yeah, I agree. So, kind of circling back to cancer, what do you think personally? Because I've had my own theories and I've thought about it a lot. Because cancer has affected my family, my whole family
Right.
quite a bit. Of course, Grandma Roseanne passed away to lung cancer. Very clear that she smoked for many years, so that was a definite cause. And then Uncle Dennis passing away from colon rectal cancer. And for me, that was very difficult because it's hard for me to pinpoint what is the cause here. I don't see a cause. For Grandma, it was so easy for me to say, well, she smoked every day, and she smoked, maybe half a pack or a whole pack a day, and it's like, that's gonna lead to that. But for you, what is your theory about your cancer? Where do you have a theory of where it maybe came from or why it exists?
I don't have a theory because, like you say, I ate fairly healthy and I, didn't do drugs and alcohol and smoke and so on.
Right.
It possibly could have been the stress. You're under a lot of, you have a lot of responsibility as a teacher, you have a lot of responsibility as a coach. And then I think the year or two I really felt stressed was when Dana College closed.
Oh, yeah.
And several students transitioned over to Midland, and I inherited them as an academic advisor. And those students were so sad. They'd lost their college, they'd lost their part-time job, they'd lost maybe their career, they thought maybe they'd lost their scholarship. So they were so sad. And I said, well, don't feel bad. I lost my alma mater, so I don't know where my where my credentials are now. But
It's kind of funny.
and I took those situations personally. I don't know how many I ended up working with, but
Yeah.
and some of them had a major that we really didn't have at Midland, so we tried to adjust classes that they had taken, and so I was on a mission to see that those students graduated. And that was the only time I felt really stressed, I think.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that had anything to do with it. I mean, it was about the same time I was maybe diagnosed with cancer, but I don't know if that's related. Because otherwise, you've got the DNA piece, and you've got the lifestyle piece, and you've got the environment piece, and who knows? Because everyone is affected, no matter how young, how old, how rich, how poor, how
It's it does not discriminate.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, wow. That would have been when I started going into Midland as well. When that
Right,
happened.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt sorry for
Yeah.
you because, the theater program was not at its best.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think there was probably a challenge that, well, Midland maybe would have even closed if Dana hadn't closed.
Right.
So it was,
It was
yeah,
kind
that
of a
was
one or
a
the other situation.
kind of a stressful when you've taught at a place and then you attended the place that did close. I mean, it just all.
Yeah.
But I didn't dwell on it, but I just remember I was on. I'd meet with students 6 o'clock in the morning or 11 o'clock at night to figure out their schedules. I just that really.
Right. Well, and I think you mentioned that, but you're right. Their theater program wasn't there, but through the course of time that I was there, it was built. It was essentially built back up.
Oh yeah, that has to make you feel really good.
Oh my
Because
God. Yeah.
they could have eliminated the program, but they didn't. And students like you that just kept plugging away and say, well, maybe we only have 10 kids in the choir, but we're going to be the best choir in the
Yeah, that's
stay with our 10 kids.
Yeah.
So
Well, and certainly, in choir, I think I kind of dropped off a little bit. I certainly continued to sing and stuff throughout college, but in theater, that was something that Lee Meyer ended up coming to join us as well, and so it was just so special to once again be working with her. But then the Young Americans partnered as well, so I got to meet some really amazing people through that. And then by our freshman year, it was kind of bare bones, but by my senior year, we were having these big productions, and I was fortunate enough to be able to be leads in a few different.
I know your senior performance was amazing. I don't think you ever left the stage.
I only left at intermission, so and that was just an amazing experience for me. So I do wish I had filmed it. I didn't film it, but yeah, that was a really special, and it was a special year too. I think those people coming over from Dana, some of them were very frustrated at first, but they gradually came to really enjoy and love and cherish Midland.
And I think Midland students did a good job of accepting them, and and yeah, there were some, a lot of talent, academically, athletically. So yeah, it was win-win situation. It was a win for Midland because they needed the students, and it was a win for the Dana students because they had an opportunity to complete their college educations.
Right. Did I tell you who recruited me? Who gave me a phone call? I think I maybe told you before. How Ben Sass actually called me.
No.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
He actually called me and tried to convince me to come to Midland. Because at the time I was on the fence. I wanted to go to Wesleyan.
Right.
And,
right.
Yeah. So it's
Well,
just a funny
interesting.
memory to me because now of course he's a senator, and I'm like, man, that's kind of funny how that
Well, this
worked
is a
out.
funny story because when I graduated from high school, I really didn't know what I was going to do. And then about a week after graduation, I said, maybe I'll go over to Dana and check it out. And I drove on campus, had no idea where I was going, ended up going to the administration building, ended up in the president's office, and the president actually signed me up for summer classes because I decided I wanted to finish in 3 years, so I knew I had to go to summer school.
Yeah.
So the president of Dana College signed me up for those classes.
That's nice. That shows a level of involvement for sure. So that's good. Something that you had just talked about was stress. Steve Jobs talked about stress as well, maybe being something that he thinks led to his cancer.
Yes, he would be under stress,
Yeah.
I would say.
And there was a specific point in time when he actually said, I think this was the time. And it was when he was the CEO of Apple, and he had actually become the CEO of Pixar as well. And so he was driving between these two different places constantly, trying to help, kind of build up Pixar, because at the time Pixar was a very small studio. They were the first studio to ever use computers to computer animation or 3D animation. So they were doing these really groundbreaking things in animation and film, and he wanted to be a part of that. He saw it as very inspirational. And John Lasseter, who I think at the time was doing a lot of stuff for Disney, ended up coming over to Pixar. And then I think that's how they made Toy Story. So Toy Story was their first feature film. It became one of the most iconic and memorable movies of all time, I would say, and certainly something that I remember from my childhood. But he had said in his in his biography that was when he thinks that he probably started dealing with this pancreatic cancer that ended up taking his
It's hard to
life.
believe that, because you don't. I mean, you don't. It's not like pain. So you can, be stressed, and I suppose it can create physical problems without you realizing it.
Right.
It's not like an injury that you
Excuse me,
totally
sorry.
realize that this happened and this is where it started and so on. But yeah, and I really feel like they should be doing more to prevent cancer, and I think they can. Sometimes I think it's political because it's become such a huge. I mean, if you think of all the money it brings in through drugs and through cancer hospitals, and it's just, it kind of almost controls our society.
It's an industry.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree, and I think it makes me it kind of, I mean, that's something very disheartening to me, is seeing people being taken advantage of, and then the people that do have the money to be able to fight cancer, they're gonna put a lot of money into it, and the companies don't seem to care if they get better, I guess, because
Well, it's like the chemo world, and I went through probably a couple years of chemo, and for certain cancers and certain people I think it's probably great, but I could tell it's basically destroying your body.
yeah,
I mean, it's like pouring poison in your body, and I thought, well, this will keep me alive for a few more days or weeks or months, but it affects your appetite, it affects your teeth, it affects your hair, it affects everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I just said, well, this is, something that I'm going to deal with. And again, just take a day at a time. And
Well, and a testament to your sheer willpower, to be able to pour poison into yourself and then still, your body is still there and still thriving.
right. And like I say, for certain kinds of cancer, liver cancer, the rate of going into remission or recovery is not very good. I think there's probably a lot of different kinds of cancer that chemo is the answer,
Right.
But I see a lot of situations where it just prolongs and it's not really quality life.
Yeah.
When you're on chemo, there's a lot of side effects that you deal with. And so you're alive, but it's not. And then you still have to go through the dying process. No matter how long you take chemo, and it extends your life a little bit, but then at some point you have to go through the dying process.
Yeah. As far as we know.
Yeah, that's right. You're going to live to be 500?
500, yeah, totally. Kind of my philosophy, and we can maybe kind of end on this topic, but, we've talked about interstellar travel and the idea of going to different planets and that humanity could expand beyond the Earth and just how cool of a dream that would be. But, and I think I've shared this with you before, but I kind of said, if I want to have kids and I want to do that here on Earth, and I want them to be able to kind of experience this. And then once they get to the age where they can go off and be themselves, at that point, maybe I won't feel the need as much to be there for them all the time. But I really want to be there when they're young and really be as involved as I can possibly be.
And of course, I think the challenge right now is, what is our world going to be like in 10 years, 20 years? Yeah, hopefully it's not going to change to that point.
Mm-hmm.
But, when you see countries like Venezuela, China, Cuba, what's happened in those countries, do you really want to bring children into that kind of a world?
Right.
And hopefully, that's not going to happen.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's actually why I would want to have kids, because I want them to be the solution. I want to be that watchful protector for them when they're young and they need it. And I want to be able to provide for them. But then, I also want to instill into them some of these ideas, a lot of these, maybe all of these ideas we've talked about.
And I guess what the sad part is, you can't protect them from the world.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can protect them in your home or in your little environment, but you can't protect them from the entire world and what's happening, in your country or in your world. That's why we probably will need a new planet, so we can start a new country or a new democracy on a different planet.
I think it's funny. I've talked to you about the movie Interstellar, and there is actually a line when they're, we should watch it, by the way, where they're going off, and she's talking about nature. One of the characters, her name is Brand, Dr. Brand, and she's talking about how nature is not inherently evil. She says, when you see a lion attack a gazelle, that's not evil. The lion's just needs something to eat, so it's going to eat the gazelle.
Right. Survival.
And so then the character, my favorite character, Cooper, says, so it's just what we take with us. Our evil is what, if we take it with us, then that is what it is. And so I think, the idea of having a new planet, that's great. But ultimately, if we're inherently flawed, if we do have flaws, and we certainly do, then who's to say that planet's not just going to become another one of us, And so I think really, I am very bought into this idea of inspiring change and being that force of saying, hey, you know what? Sure, I do want to protect my kids. I want to make sure that they're cared for. I can't protect them from everything. There are going to be things that happen to them that are bad, and I'm not going to be able to be there to stop them always. when I
But
can.
you'll sure want to.
Yeah, and I sure will try, of course, if there's a.
Well, sometimes I think if each family would just embrace their family, I mean, close friends, family members, and so on, what a great world this could be.
Yeah.
Because nobody gets left out, nobody gets left behind.
Right.
I see these families that's feuding, and this one doesn't talk to this one, and this one won't share with this. I mean, just make little groups that, like Grandpa and I take care of our little family, and somebody else takes care of their little family,
But then they also work together too. These groups, and they
right.
share things amongst each other. And I think, where that starts is with conversations like this one. And so I think that's why I was so excited about talking with you and recording it and having the ability to share it with people, because I want people to see that everyone really does want to be here if they're here. And some of them are very hungry, and they don't actually know what they're hungry for. And so I want to figure that out. I want to try to figure that out and help people in that way, because I think that is what's going to change this world for the better.
I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
That's an awesome goal.
It means a lot to me. And I have a box of Buckeyes sitting right next to my bedside. So.
And I still have the one you gave me.
That's good. Perfect. So you have your luck as well. Well, I just want to say thank you so much. This has been just a joy for me, and I'm very honored that you would sit down with me today.
Well, thank you, and I'm honored that my grandson would be willing to sit down and talk to me.
Of course.
There's a lot of the older you get, the more you realize the generation gap. I mean, there's multiple people out there that don't really want to be associated with people older than they are. They always want their friends and their associates and their activities and so on to involve younger people, because that makes them feel younger. So, there's a real disconnect sometimes, and you've certainly never expressed that, or you treat Grandpa and I just like you treat anyone, whether they're 5 years old or 100 years old, and that's a special quality.
And I hope to do that to everyone, and honestly, in my perspective, we're all relatively the same age, because in the grand scheme of things, 100 years is not long at all. And no matter where you fall in that, you actually are really, not that old. So, yeah. Cool. Awesome. Well, I love you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it, and I love you too. And
Awesome.
I've enjoyed all. Too bad we didn't record all of our conversations. We had some good ones, huh?
Yeah. And I always love that, because that's how I'll start. That's how we usually start, is I sit down and I talk with somebody, and then all of a sudden we're like, oh crap, we got to hit record, because we're starting to get into the good stuff. So, cool. All right. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jorge. Oh, shout out to Jorge.